Hey, it's Nicole from Outerinnerspace, and this video is about Taurus energy and ESP, so how extrasensory perception can manifest for Taurus energy. So you can watch this if you have Taurus placements, but also for second house energy or just where Taurus is in your natal chart, because we're all made up of all the zodiac energies in our natal chart. Some areas are just more predominant, but we do have an imprint of all of them in our energetic blueprint. So I think everybody has extrasensory perception in one way or another, but some people are just more attuned to it. And a lot of the times, because we don't get educated about extrasensory perception, and in fact it's kind of given the side eye for the most part, we don't realize how natural it is for us and how we are actually working with it quite regularly every day. But it's often, well, because we're talking about the subtle energies, it's often something that we don't pay conscious mind to because it's really working with our unconscious ability to intuit. And just before I go on, it is worth watching all the videos in this series. The one I just did on Aries will feed into this one because, you know, as you go around the zodiac, the energy, like first house, second house, third house, kind of builds on the next and creates this whole picture. So in the Aries video, I talk about how the physical body is an antenna and it is intuiting messages. So for Taurus energy and extrasensory perception, it's quite relative to the five physical senses, and I know that's ironic because this is extrasensory perception, but bear with me, I'll paint a picture as I talk about this. So here in Taurus energy, or in second house energy, however you want to perceive it, it's talking about those sensations, smell and touch and sound and taste, and how they can transport you to other dimensions. And I'll give you an example just quickly. I'll read something from a book called The Holographic Universe, and it's amazing. It's by Michael Talbot, but this part is about associative memory. So bear with me because I'm going to bring this around full circle. So it says, in Proust's Swan's Way, a sip of tea and a bite of a small scallop-shaped cake known as a petite madeleine caused the narrator to find himself suddenly flooded with memories from his past. At first he is puzzled, but then slowly, after much effort on his part, he remembers that his aunt used to give him tea and madeleines when he was a little boy, and it is this association that has stirred his memory. We all have had a similar experience, a whiff of a particular food being prepared or a glimpse of some long-forgotten object that suddenly evokes some scene out of our past. And so when you think about Taurus energy and the sensory details of your experience, the environment that you surround yourself in that brings you comfort, or the art that you enjoy, these are all exciting those senses, and it's in that sensual stimulation that your ESP can kind of come into play, because it takes you to a level that is way beyond what your mind perceives. Like, you don't consciously think about how something you taste just makes you feel. That's a really automatic response, and that is extrasensory perception. It's these ways that your body and your unconscious is reacting to stimuli, and that's kind of what I'm getting at with this idea. And those being messages for you to translate for your experience. I said in the Aries video that when we are young and when we don't know how to process a certain event or a certain emotion or any kind of scenario that is too complex for our little minds to comprehend, we store that in the body and also in our energy field. And when we are receiving messages from the outer world and we haven't tended to that block of energy, we can often sort of distort the messages or have distorted thought forms that we perceive as intuition, but what it is just activating that pattern so we can clear it and so we can open up the energy to receive more information. And so with Taurus energy, and when we're talking about these moments of pleasure, so to speak, from eating great food or from, you know, getting a massage or from certain aromas, this is activating those memories in our body as well. And it's like another way of indicating like what it is in our field to be worked on to open that energy up. Because when we're operating under repetitive patterns, we are creating these shields that prevent messages from coming in, and it also creates a filter through which we see things. I talk about this more in the ESP notes, and I've linked that below. In the free section of Body as an Antenna, it talks about how we can kind of get blocked up with these old patterns, and that can be a block to accessing more of our extrasensory perceptions. With Taurus energy, it rules the neck, and in the reptilian part of our brain, which runs down our spinal cord, that is where a lot of the survival patterns are stored. And so getting a neck massage or just self-massage that area of the body, if you ever start to feel tension there, that can really help with noticing how you're being activated or triggered in a way that is relative to your survival patterns. And when we're acting from a place of survival, we are acting from a place of fear. And when we're in that space, our ability to sense what's going on in the environment gets shut down because we're in a mode of self-preservation. And I find that Taurus energy, being the second house, really does have that element of instinct and self-preservation, because it's like before the third house, which is like the mind and the way that we consciously think about things and, you know, work strategically to solve problems or at least interpret problems. But this is the second house, which is before that, which is much more instinctual to protecting our body and protecting our needs and protecting our safety. And so that part of the body, the top of the spinal cord where it connects to the reptilian brain, if you are in environments and you start to feel that part seize up, or your shoulders start to rise up the neck, and you are feeling that tension there, that's extrasensory perception telling you this environment isn't for me, or the context in this environment is triggering a certain fight or flight, freeze or fawn response, where there's energy blocked in that part of your body that is preventing either growth, or it's making a pattern activate. So this is kind of what I'm talking about with extrasensory perception, is that it's very subtle, beyond mind, beyond thought, and it's when we tune into these sensations that we, first of all, know where to look to clear any blocked energy, but second of all, we can read the information and use it to our advantage in navigating where to put our energy or where not to put it, or what's actually creating a reaction or a response. And this kind of subtlety and tuning into these kinds of subtleties is how we grow that extrasensory perception, how we refine our energy field, and how we can purify it in a way that when we are going out into these spaces, we can see more. Our perspective isn't blocked by fear or by distortion of these stored patterns. And so with Taurus energy and second house energy, it's worth noting the opposite of Scorpio, and how that is our deep fears and how that is our deep desires for a certain way of life. With Taurus energy, it's like about our needs and our senses, and how we want to live a certain life that makes us feel secure and makes us feel comfortable and is practical, and it exists around us in our physical world. But if we've ever had experiences where we haven't got our needs met, and this is linked to self-esteem, because if we haven't had the nurturing to have our needs met on those very instinctive levels of like just needing comfort when we're upset, anything like that, then our sense of self-esteem or self-worth is jeopardized, and then that gets transferred into the 8th house, the Scorpio axis. It gets buried quite deep in our psyche, and like I mentioned in the Aries video, it gets buried quite deep in our bodies as well, because it, like, where else can it go? It gets stored in our field. And so with the Taurus and Scorpio axis, it's about looking into those fears and those stored moments of our needs not getting met, or our limitations of what we see we can have for ourselves, because with Taurus energy it's about what we have and what we can acquire by our own skills. And so when we have a look at those survival patterns, that energy that is in our neck, where we are responding instinctively and in a mode of self-preservation, not with that trust that the universe can provide for us. So that's where we kind of use that Scorpio energy to transmute those fears and those traumas and those patterns that we've picked up through our life. And I did a video on the second and eighth house axis which talks more about this. So for Taurus energy, in order to do this kind of thing, being in really natural environments, particularly grounding practices where you're in a garden or in a park, where you can feel those neck muscles in the shoulder kind of start to open, and then using earth energy to purify the field, just letting everything kind of seep into the earth and transmute, and then noticing how your body expands and reacts to that can really help purify your field. And then when you find yourself in an environment where those instinctive reactions are triggered, or if you feel like there's an inkling of those needs not being met, then with the practice of grounding and regular attunement to the senses and to the physical body and to the way you feel and to that sense of comfort and trust that you will be provided for, then it becomes less of a trigger and more of like a choice. This is connected to our root chakra energy of like stability and security. So allowing that root chakra just to feel connected to the earth, how you're an organism like a plant or a tree or an animal, and it's natural that your needs will get met, and then creating a certain level of trust with the cycles of nature and cycles of the universe, the seasons and the transits of the planets. I know that is broad scope, but it is that natural, organic, cyclic kind of a timeline that as an earth sign, tuning into kind of shows you that everything is working in cycles and it's natural for your needs to get met. But when we are holding those fears of our needs not getting met, or not feeling like we're worth having those needs met, it puts up an energetic barrier to magnetize that eighth house energy or attract those certain situations to us. And so that's why these regular attunement sessions with the physical body in nature and connecting to the root chakra and releasing the survival patterns in the reptilian brain to be transmuted with that opposite Scorpio energy is really going to help you tune into those senses. And then applying Taurus's Venus energy of these leisure moments and of these like fluid alpha wave, sort of slower wave, like not thinking but just being present and tending to your senses, eating the good food and putting on ambient music and having the good smells around. It's in those moments where you receive these really incredible intuitive downloads of where to go next, or a strategy of how you can put a plan in place to get your needs met, or, you know, do this creative project or this new angle with work, that kind of stuff. Like, it's in those leisure moments, but it is about cultivating that ability to really tune into those sensations and the sensory reactions, and how you receive the information is going to be very nuanced and very specific. You might receive visions, or you might have like a thought download that's like a fully formed idea that you just know all the intricacies of, or you might do automatic writing to receive this kind of thing. And it's also going to only mean something to you, so it's a really personal experience in that way. So this is just a bit of a glimpse of how ESP can kind of come into play with Taurus energy. And like I said before, it really is worth watching all the videos in this series to get a more comprehensive view of your whole chart. And as well, I did a chart ruler series, and there's a Venus chart ruler for Taurus energy that in hindsight I realize doesn't necessarily need to be for the chart ruler only, it can be for all of Taurus energy, but that's worth watching to get a bit more of an idea of how this might manifest for you. So I hope you found some value in this video, and I wish you well.